Nice.
Hey guys, welcome to this Ask Me Anything with Joe Natoli. Please correct me if I mispronounced your Sicilian.
That was beautiful.
Okay, just
Bene,
making
bene.
sure. Pepperoncini,
Sì,
pepperoncini.
sì, sì.
Joe, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're a very popular guy, and I'm sure that there are many people that are tuning in to get a peek at this. We're gonna give it some time before they chime in.
Mhm.
But while people are coming into the event, I'd love to just give you a chance to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Give Good UX
Sure,
and the UX 365 Academy.
sure. Well, like you said, I mean, a lot of people kinda know my name, so I'm not gonna bore you with the big, long story, but I mean, I've been consulting with companies of all shapes and sizes, mostly big enterprise orgs and government agencies for the last 30 years of my life, which is astounding. It's astounding. You don't think you're this old, but sometimes you look in the mirror and you go, "Oh, okay. I guess it's been a while." Um, I've been lucky, I've had a life that has allowed me to teach online. I've taught lots of students online and offline at university as well, and we've the greatest thing I think I've ever been involved with is the UX 365 Academy. Okay, I for a long time, for years, I felt like there's no option for people who can't afford a $3,000 boot camp, a $5,000 boot camp, a $15,000 boot camp, and then you have the part of this that you go and you learn all this stuff, and it really doesn't do much to prepare you for a job. It doesn't help you get interviews. It doesn't get you as far as you expect. And I think that just sucks. So, like we were having a conversation earlier about entrepreneurship, right? You see a problem, a hole, an issue, and you say, I want to do something about this. And you don't quite know how you're going to do that, but you roll something out and you say, all right, let's see what happens. So that's how I started online teaching on Udemy back in 2013 or whatever it was. Wanting to publish books, it's all the same stuff. You say there has to be a better way. People deserve more, and that's kind of at the core of everything that I do, I think.
And one of the characteristics that I've come to find just talking to you in this brief time that we've gotten to know each other is that it's just very innately you. You have to create. It's like
Oh yeah.
a compulsive disorder. It just needs to
Yeah,
be
very much.
expressed.
Yeah, it's not a choice. You figure out at some point, I think that this is who you are. Okay. The need to go out and do things and try different things, and quite frankly, do it your own way, is very much a need that has to be answered. And I am very unhappy, and I'm unhappy, not a very fun person to be around when I'm not being honest with myself about what I want to do and how I want to do it, and chasing these things, chasing these opportunities, trying things. Um, just go right down to the way that I work with teams, or the way that I coach people. Um, there are lots of prescriptions and methods out there. I don't care about any of them. I don't think they work. I've never gotten any results from any of those tried and true prescriptions or recipes. So, you say, I'm not doing that. I don't do that. When clients come to me for certain types of things that really aren't me or things I believe in doing, I find a way to politely say, no, look, you need somebody else. It's not me, not what I do. So yeah, to your point, there's no other option here than to stay busy and have multiple projects and multiple things in the air at the same time. It's who I am.
Joe, I'd just like to let you know that it seems that we have about 24 live viewers,
Cool.
and
Welcome, everybody.
some of them are saying hi. Hi, Vinay, and hi, Joseph. Um, so maybe we should dive into, some questions,
Sure.
and I'll just put this ticker here. So, if anybody has any questions, this is an Ask Me Anything.
Absolutely.
Jump in with curiosity. But let's talk a little bit about user experience design
Mhm.
and what that is.
That's a big question. But here's what I love about the question. I think it's not what people necessarily think it is. There's lots of prescriptions for what UX is and what it isn't. Too many for my taste, as a matter of fact. Um, the bottom line is this: I think I always call it, the thing that I sort of come up with is it's a value loop, right? You have users, you have a product in the center, you have users on one end, you have a business on the other end. There's a relationship that happens, right? If people see something, perceive it, that it might help them do something, they go, okay, this might be worth my time. And then they give it a shot. Hopefully, what happens from that very first interaction is that they get something back. Something happens that says, wow, yeah, that was easier. It was better. It was faster. It was whatever. And then if that happens, chances are pretty good that value comes back out to that business as well. Because here's the deal. Here's the part that nobody talks nearly enough about. Businesses, by and large, don't give a shit about good UX or good design unless it furthers a goal that they already have. So value has to come back from that user interaction to them in a way that makes them go, oh, this is worth doing. This is worth improving. This is worth making better for people, right? It's worth improving the design and user experience of this product because it's getting us something. So they're more than happy to do things that are good for people if their needs are already being met as well. So that's how that cycle continues. If the business cares about it, they continue to improve it. People continue to use it. If anything fails on either side of that equation, you're in trouble. Right?
If I may add to that, I think from my perspective and limited experience, user experience design is perceived to be, as you said, something that is obscure and sort of ill-defined, and more soft. It's more of a soft skill, but in reality, it's a hard science that's been codified. It's the scientific method. It's an engineering process.
Sure.
And it's gathering evidence and combining what you can quantify and qualify. You make assumptions, you test those hypotheses, and you see, how do I make this thing better with evidence? And who tells me that this is better? And who am I serving, or what problem am I solving?
Right. Right. Which is the core of design in general, right? I think one of the things that hangs people up a lot is that they feel like they have to know, or they have to have all the answers at the outset. It's just really not true. You're not going to know anything until you put something out in the world and you watch people use it and you see what the reaction is. All you have at that point, even if you've done research, you don't have any answers. You've got lots of questions and you have lots of possible hypotheses. And now you got to sort of prove out, whether you were right or not. That's the game. It's okay. My point being, it's okay not to know. That's part of this. I actually see questions. Do we want to jump to those, or what do you want to do?
Ray is asking a question. The
Might
more
be
I do,
more of a product. Yeah. Huh. Look, I firmly believe, I don't know what it's like on the other side of the equation, because I think you do encounter product managers who get their feathers ruffled a little bit when they feel like someone's trying to do their job. But I feel like UX folks are uniquely positioned to be excellent product managers. I think everything about the way we go about doing our jobs, from our mindsets to processes to the things that we're used to digging into and uncovering, I think it's a natural fit. I think you're an informed party, who has a really good shot at fulfilling that role. Now, I think the part that may be missing for a lot of UX folks is the managing people side. That's a discipline in and of itself. Okay. And that takes a lot of patience and a lot of practice to get right. But if your question is it worthwhile switching to PM roles? Yeah. And especially if you've been doing this for more than a decade. And here's the other thing. If you're feeling like a pull towards this, right? My response to any idea I have about changing direction or doing something or trying something, if it comes up more than 3 times in my head, right? If I think to myself more than 3 times, maybe I should think about doing PM work. If that happens more than 3 times and you find yourself returning to that thought all the time, guess
something's
what?
pulling you.
Yeah, that's a sign. At the very least, it's worth exploring. All right. The last thing I'll say in response to your question is that, again, I'm 30 years down the road. What I know for sure at this point is there are no wrong turns. There's no such thing. Okay. There are no wrong turns. You try something, you go, yeah, that works. I'm going to keep doing this. Or, yeah, it worked, but there's this other part I like more. So you gravitate towards that. Or you say, all right, that was a wrong turn. I got to turn around and go back to where I started. So what? So what? You've been doing this for 10 years. You can change back again anytime you want. So if you have an inclination, take the shot. That's my advice.
If I may just add to that, a little perspective from my view, product managers are also an obfuscated profession, and
Yes.
like that role varies from organization to organization. Some might see you as a more of a UX product manager. Some might put you in a more of a technical realm.
Mm-hmm.
So depending on the
How
organization
they
size,
define it. Yeah.
yeah, how do you define that profession? Then it may be a more natural switch, or it might be a harder switch.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to switch to another question
Yep.
by Keith Horvath.
AI. I get this one every week, just about. I don't think there are trends that I see. I think we're at a point where in practice, okay, despite all the hype that you read about, at least the organizations that I work with, there are more questions than answers. And a lot of those questions are not so much technical as they are ethical. And there's a lot of shakeup and there's been a lot of scrutiny. And if I know one thing, what corporations are, I won't say afraid of, but tentative about is anything that could potentially open them up to liability. So you have two sides of this coin. On one hand, companies are going to rush to embrace it. They're like, this is amazing. There are incredible things we can do. And then there's their legal team saying, tread carefully right now. Right. Because it's really up in the air with everything that just, went down with OpenAI in general. Just the shakeup that happened with their leadership was enough to give everybody pause. The big furor right now around whether copyrighted works should be allowed to be fed into AI is a very big thing, and it's bigger than you think it is. All right. Those conversations are much deeper than they seem online, believe me. So it's interesting, it's fascinating, but I don't think we're anywhere near any sort of real implementation yet in terms of product design and improvement.
This is more of a comment. Juana is saying she's looking forward to seeing your class in
Oh yeah,
Brazil.
yeah. POCRS. I recorded that quite a while ago. That's really cool. That's very cool. I don't get any feedback about that course. I mean, I worked with the university to do it, and like you've got 8 million things going on, and I sort of lost sight of it. But it's really cool when someone brings it up and say, "Oh yeah, I took that course." I love that that's out there. I love that it's happening. So thank you for mentioning it.
We have a question from Todd Kelly. Hi, Joe. In these times when companies are making cutbacks and going through reorganizations, what is one thing that a leader can do to keep their team morale up?
That's a tough one. Because and this is something I've been talking about a lot recently. I've even done some sort of mini workshops with folks and given some talks at conferences about how to deal with layoffs, how to protect your job, because I don't believe there's any way to future-proof your job. Let's put that out there right now. I think that's a fallacy. Mainly because a lot of these cuts and reorgs, since all the way back to November 2022, okay, when this sort of trend sort of picked up, none of this is about performance. None of this is about people's ability or their on-the-job performance or even about results. It's not even about profit margins in a lot of cases. A lot of these companies are doing very well. The reason they're making cuts is because there's pressure on them in various areas of the organization to show different results, right? Or to meet predictions that they had no business making in the first place. The simplest way to do that is to cut bodies. The easiest way to make those numbers look better is to cut your ranks, okay? So if you're asking me what to say to your team, to me, I think it's a combination of things. Number one, I think they have to realize that some of this is out of their control and it serves no purpose to walk around worrying about it, okay? Because the only thing you can ever do on any given day is do your absolute best. But the other thing that they can be doing, and I would communicate this to them as well, the other thing they absolutely can be doing to at least try and stabilize themselves to some degree, or protect themselves to some reasonable degree. The simplest way to explain it is this: make yourself valuable to every person in every department in as many places as possible inside that organization. Start to live outside product. Start to live outside design and UX. Start broadcasting the work that you're doing, the results that it's getting, what you're achieving, how you do it. The real problem when UX and design jobs get cut is that a lot of the people making those decisions have no fucking idea what those people do all day. They don't have a clue. To them, it's pretty stuff. It's gold plating. They don't get it. They don't know what it is. They can't quantify it. They're like, whatever, we're cutting here. So the best thing you can do for yourself and for your people is start making an active plan to say, how do we raise our profile and our visibility and have more people in more places see us as indispensable? You got to change the nature of conversations you're having with people away from UX and product design and toward, what are your goals right now? What are you most worried about? What results are you on the hook for? And how can we help you get there? You got to start looking outside the stuff you do every single day and sort of extending that. All right. I don't know if that was helpful. It's a tough question to answer in a short period of time, but I think those things help. But I also think letting them off the hook, okay, to say, look, 9 times out of 10, this is going to have nothing to do with you. There's nothing wrong with your performance. There's nothing wrong with your ability or your skill set or your whatever. And I personally think that goes a long way.
I think you did a fabulous job at painting the bigger picture, and the context of why that would happen. We have a comment from David Martinez, and he was commenting to Apura Ray. He also believes that you could be a product manager if you have a UX background.
Yeah.
Apura Ray says, thank you so much. We have Keith Horvath. Again, with the same sentiment. I think you pretty much answered that.
I see what he's asking, though. This is an important component of that. Generalist versus specialist. It depends on two things. It largely depends on demand. It also depends on where your experience lies. For instance, the advice that I give people starting in this field all the time is you always want to be a generalist first. Okay, because there's going to be what you need most, especially if you have the idea that you're going to be a freelancer. What you need most are more job opportunities, not less. And if you're a generalist, you have the ability to go in more places. You can always go from generalist to specialist because you've done all those things, and you can sort of pick and choose and say, all right, I'm best at this. If you start out as a specialist, there's a whole lot of experience you don't have. So if that goes away, if that specialty goes away, or it's no longer in demand, now you got a problem, right? Because you're not marketable anymore. And I honestly believe that the trend in this industry is toward generalists. Think about the things that have gone away. There was a point when information architect was a role. It was a very specific role related to UX, and people got hired to do that. Not anymore. It's kind of gone by the wayside. So I think in a way we're going through this weird rebound where companies are going, I don't know, we're going to, like all the number cutting stuff that I just talked about. They're going, well, we could get people to do multiple jobs and we don't have to pay one person to do that. That's a very real thing. And I think that's kind of where we are. So I personally have always believed that being a generalist is a better tack. I think that there's always going to be some corporate blindness and a lot of selfishness in terms of pure financial reality, fiduciary duty to shareholders, for example. It's always going to influence that. So if you are a generalist, even if your role is specialized, if you work to educate yourself to be more of a generalist, I think that's always in your benefit because you can pivot. It allows you choices. It allows you to say, yeah, I can do that. When there's a hole, you can fill it. And in terms of keeping your job and protecting your job, that's a value as well, because the more places you can apply yourself, the more useful and valuable you are to all those people around you.
We have a question from Yogesh Yadav. Nowadays, people are talking about AI every day. What are your thoughts about the future of UX after AI?
I honestly don't think it changes. Um, I am not a person, and I may change my mind 5 years from now. I don't believe that AI is going to replace anybody in this profession. It can possibly replace production type jobs, tactical type work that really doesn't require a lot of thought. Yeah, will that possibly go away? Sure. Sure. We've seen signs of that already. Um, it's not going to replace uh, the need to use what's between your ears to deal with context, to deal with human complexity. That is not going to be a thing for a very long time. You all have to realize this: for as much hype as you hear every day about AI, how it's being used in practice is very, very extremely different than what you read about. And it is still very much largely human driven at almost every level. That's not changing anytime soon, my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories and hype around AI is going to take over the world, or Terminator's coming after us tomorrow.
Sure.
It's still requires quite a bit of work to even get to the next inch of innovation. Um,
And it's
but
wrong about it. We're still at the point where it's wrong about everything. And that has everything to do with what it has access to, right? That's source material. I mean, as great as ChatGPT is, for example, you have to take everything it does with a grain of salt. Why? Because it's pulling from lots of sources, some of which are more than questionable.
would you say that AI is a new medium or a new tool, but more so a medium,
Yes.
something that it acts as an interface, like
Yes.
a canvas
Yes.
or a computer screen? I mean, it's just
It's a different way to interact. It's absolutely a different way to interact. I mean, the one thing that all those sci-fi movies and Philip K. Dick novels or whatever, William Gibson stuff got right is that what changes is the way we interface with things.
mm,
I mean, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe longer, if I told you that we would be doing the things we do with this tiny little device that fits in your pocket, I mean, people would have looked at you like you were crazy. Before the first iPad came out, or the first oh my, the iPod is what I was after, came out. I mean, that was just not a conversation. But it's all happened in a very short period of time. So the discipline is changing. What we do is changing, but it's not going away. It's evolving. There are different ways to interface with things. And that's why I always tell people your job is not what you can do with your hands. All right. It's what's between your ears. That's where your value is.
we have a comment from Tina Gata, and she's just sending some support. Whatever you said makes so much sense. It's all about trying and learning. It's about always knowing your users and acting up to it from research.
Agreed.
Um, Drew
Agreed.
Herema requested that we read the questions out loud. That's why I've been doing my best to state them out.
Oh, okay.
David Martinez is sharing some insight from his personal journey. I knew I could be a product manager in 2014 when I saw how another PM was prioritizing features. He was doing it more based on personal bias and experience than what our existing customer research or data said, and that my understanding of best practices heuristics could do. That was an eye-opening moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the case, right? And that's how they're taught. I mean, product managers go down a very traditional path to learning. There's a specific way this job is done, and here's what it is. And the more that we all interface in a collaborative environment, that changes. And I think more UX folks getting involved in product management will eventually have a hand in changing the discipline. Okay, I think that's a good thing. Just like I think it's great that developers and product managers are starting to sort of be in our territory a little bit. There's everything to gain from these crossovers. It's a necessity. You can't just live in your own bubble in your own vacuum and like do your little piece. The world doesn't work like that anymore. Nothing works like that anymore. It takes the proverbial village. So I love all that crossover. I think it's great.
I think another thing that the UX profession or the design and research profession bring is that they're not just they may be shooting with the gut, they might be using the gut as part of intuition, but they're thirsty for knowledge. They're gonna go seek, okay, like I don't know how to wrangle with this problem. I know we have to sort these problems based on prioritization
Right.
and impact to business, but let's go just sniff out which one of these seems to be the biggest pain point that we can handle. Um,
Yeah, it's
so
it's all a balancing act. And sometimes you're gonna have to guess. Sometimes you are gonna have to use your gut and your intuition because the evidence is just not there. It's just not. I mean, and plus I'm a big fan of Erica Hall, as anyone who knows me knows. Um, and one of the things that I heard her say in a podcast interview that was just so right on to me, it's something I've always believed, but was never able to verbalize, is what she was saying is that, look, research doesn't give you answers. It gives you clues. It tells you where to dig. It tells you what could be happening. It tells you what needs to be investigated more. But it doesn't provide hard answers like, yes, this is the truth. No, it's not the truth. Behavior is the truth. What people do with what you put out there is the truth. There's no way to totally know that.
and
So
truth is subjective in a
of
world
course,
where there's multiple actors. So
yeah,
what may be the truth for one might not be for another customer or client or end user.
absolutely.
Keith Horvath says, "Thank you for your thorough response."
You're welcome.
Tina Gara is asking, "What
That's
is
a good
one
one.
thing you will say to new designers who think UX is more about UI or interfaces? How can we change that perspective?"
Well, here's what I think. I think that the way I see this play out online is the wrong way to do it. What I see online is a lot of immediate criticism, and sort of looking down on and shaming that happens to UI people. And UXers are like, well, that's not real UX. First of all, stop that shit, is what I would say. Okay. It's not helping. Instead, what should be happening is you have to meet people where they are. Okay. I've been teaching people a very long time. I've been teaching university since 1992. Obviously, I've had a lot of students. I got 300,000 plus online students. You have to meet people where they are. So if all they know of this discipline is the visual part, you start with that.
Hmm.
And you say, okay, these decisions that you made here and here and here, this color you chose, this button style, where you placed this content, this copy in relation to this other accordion control or whatever it is. Explain why those particular choices either enhance or detract from user experience. Explain why those choices make things easier or harder to use something. Connect the dots. I started out as a graphic designer, and I will maintain until my dying day that the principles I learned about graphic design and visual communication inform every aspect of good user experience. They're there. The design rules class that I teach about UI is essentially about delivering good user experiences. It's about making good visual choices that support behavior, that support human perception. So when you start to talk to those people about sort of the physiology behind why we perceive things the way we do visually and why we respond to certain visual choices the way we do, now you're having a conversation about what UX is. Okay. And if you can get them to go there with you, that's an easier journey for them to make the connection. Once you get them there, now you can start talking about the larger parts of, okay, there's more to it than this. There's the research part of this. There's all these other pieces of how you deliver good UX in a product. But I think our biggest failure, if we just single out UX for a second, is that we ostracize people who see the discipline differently than we do, or maybe just don't understand it. We have to collectively, I think, get off our high horses. It doesn't help anybody. All this stuff about the right way to do something, the wrong way to do something, gives a shit.
There's trade-offs to every decision, and you have to take different routes according to what constraints you have in front of you.
That's right. And sometimes all you got is UI. If you've got a couple days to turn something around, the bottom line is we have to put a new interface on this thing in 2 to 3 days. That's reality. It doesn't matter whether you agree with that or not. It doesn't matter. It's happening. What those people need is they need some advice to say, okay, I've got 3 days. What the hell do I do? So you meet them where they are. You say, okay, if all you can do is change the visual, here are the things you're going to look for. Here are the opportunities you want. Right. And that's what I do. I have teams come to me all the time. They're like, look, we have this much time to make this better. What the hell do we do? The answer is we're going purely visual. All the changes we're making are going to be visual. But what I'm advising them to do is look for the parts that are problematic that occur across this entire enterprise-wide application so that when you fix something once, it gets changed in a bunch of different places. At the very least, make this call to action more visible. Make the next step clearer with some visual accent that says, hey, by the way, you're supposed to do this next. All right, whatever it is. If that's all you got, that's all you got. And that's okay. It's just as valid as anything else. Off my soapbox now.
I just want to add to that. There's a thing in Spanish that I've been that I pull out of my pocket from time to time, and it's nadie nace sabio. I don't know if you could pick that up in Italian, but nobody's born wise.
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do? I mean, people have these preconceived notions based on what they see superficially. Oh,
Yes.
you're the pixel pusher. Oh, you're doing the Photoshop stuff, right?
Sure.
No, well, I'm shaping psychology. I'm enhancing heuristics so people can intuitively use this machine, the system.
Correct.
But anyways, Juana says she'll send you feedback when she takes the course.
Please do. Please do. I would love that.
Joseph says, I love Joe's insight and technical advice on UX, but his philosophies and people soft skills are the best. This is why I follow him.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yogesh Yadav is asking, what essential skills would you prioritize when hiring a team of designers for your project?
This is all about, again, it's not about their tactical skills. Obviously, if you're hiring UI designers, they obviously have to have some evidence of visual skill, right? But the thing I look for in people when I'm hiring is I want to know how they think. I want to know how they tackle problems. I want to know how they deal with complexity. I want to know what they do mostly when they're faced with something that kind of feels difficult or kind of feels out of their depth. How do you apply yourself? Are you, I think where a lot of challenges in interviews miss the mark is they focus on tactical skills, or they focus on, did you get the right answers to this procedure and process, which is wrong. The question is, what do you do when you're facing a difficult situation? And what you're looking for as an interviewer is you want that person to say, well, there are a lot of unknowns here. So the first thing I would do is ask a hell of a lot of questions of a hell of a lot of people. That's what I want. I've said many times over the years, I'll take attitude over experience every day of the week. Absolutely. Okay. You need somebody who's going to dive in there and not be intimidated by complexity or be intimidated by something they've never done before or never seen before. You want people who are going to reach out to folks in other disciplines to get their opinion and their advice. That's what you want. This whole thing about, what's the phrase? I lost it for a second. Hit the ground running. Okay. I see this in job advertisements all the time. And you hear this, like, we need someone who's going to hit the ground running. It's the stupidest thing ever. Nobody hits the ground running. It doesn't happen. It's a new environment. It's a new product. It's new processes. It's new personalities. It's new politics. It's a new environment. Okay. The ramp up period is going to be anywhere from 6 to 12 months before that person really has their feet under them. So to me, what you want in a team of designers is you want people who don't believe they have all the answers and who absolutely demonstrate to you that they're willing to go the extra mile to figure out anything that they're confronted with. Okay. If I don't know how to do it, I'm damn well going to find out. That to me is what you want more than anything else.
I think in the opposite side of the spectrum, a really big red flag is hubris and big ego. Like, okay, based on my experiences, based on what I've done in the past, I don't care what the user says. This is the way that we're going to do things. It's a huge liability for doing things in a vacuum.
I agree.
Uh,
You want someone who sees their job not as knowing or having all the answers. You want someone who sees their job as finding out, as learning, as proving that this is the
Investigator.
right approach. I agree with you.
David Martinez he says, I'm a loudmouth on Slack. I have my own design channel where I can post updates and ideas for future opportunities and drop 5-minute videos. Super easy to raise your profile, as Joe says.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Find a way. Okay. If you have opinions, if you have ideas, put them out there. And I always say it doesn't matter whether you've been on the job for 5 minutes or 5 years. You have something to say. If you have a point of view to express, you need to start expressing it. If you've done things that have benefited this organization in some way, you need to start talking about them. People need to know that. Okay. Not about, look what I can do. It's about here's what I can help you do.
Mm.
Right. It's a very different conversation. So yeah, it's a great example, David.
And I think there's a negative connotation when you advocate for yourself. Sometimes people feel that, oh, you're an egomaniac, or that people are going to
There's a
dislike you.
line.
Yeah, there's a line.
There's a fine line, but you kind of have to do that to some degree. No one else is going to toot your horn like
Right.
you do.
Yeah.
You got to do it again. You got to do it in the context of the outcome, not here's how smart I am or here's all this awesome stuff I did. You want to say, we collectively, this team, if you work on a team, we did some things. They got some what we feel are pretty important results, and it's really changed the way that we look at things. Or it's we had something go south last month, and it really changed the way that we look at things. And here's what we've done differently, and it's getting results. And here's what those results are. So yeah, it can't be about you as a person. It can't be about making yourself look good. I agree with that.
Tina is saying, what is
Oh, that's
one
the
thing?
same.
Oh,
That's the
yeah,
same
no,
concept.
that's a repeat. Arjit Singh is saying, what do you suggest about places where leadership is not able to create space for UX because they're being product first? If they're product
Product
first,
first is UX
UX. Yeah.
to me. I mean,
Maybe they have a proclivity for technical specifications, and they say, that's maybe they don't recognize the value of it, right?
yeah. I mean, without knowing the technicalities of what that division is, I think it's a hard question to answer. I will say this though, whenever I hear questions like that, okay, where leadership is saying, well, we're going to listen to these folks first, and then if you're doing UX and design, like you're second. Anytime that is happening, anytime you're being nudged out of the equation, you have to ask yourself why. And people don't like it when I say this because it sounds accusatory. It's not. The first thing to do, if you're going, well, they don't get it, point the finger this way and ask yourself, what can we be doing differently?
Hmm.
If you're separated, there's two parts to that. Yes, there is always a business component or product or whoever who is sort of separating you and saying, well, the UX people are over here. At the same time, I have yet in the last 25 years to work with a team who wasn't also inadvertently separating themselves.
Mm.
Has everything to do with what you talk about, how you talk about it, the terms you use, the conversations you have with people, to what degree you invite yourself into other things going on around you that maybe you weren't before. That's a big thing with me. If people aren't inviting you to conversations, find a way to invite yourself. But again, if you're constantly walking around going, well, that's UX's job, we should be doing that work, or like, you need to involve us because we know more about this than you do. Not that anybody says that out loud.
Yeah, but having that
It
attitude.
gets implied.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to change the way that you deal with other people radically in some cases. So anytime I hear a question like this, there's almost always some component of, okay, yeah, you may be able to change them to some degree. There is usually a component of that. But the part that you have a lot more control over is your part. So you say, all right, if they're excluding us, what can we do differently to get them to see that they could be getting more from us than they are right now? They could be getting better things from us that they actually care about from us. It's a question worth asking, and it's hard, and it doesn't feel good, and it sort of feels like, blaming the abused instead of the abuser in some cases, but it helps. Okay, I will tell you that truthfully, it helps in a lot of cases.
I think a simple mindset shift is to watch your mouth and make sure that whatever comes out of your mouth is more of a yes and to
Yes,
confirm
yes,
existing knowledge that they have, because people are smart too. Just because you're a UXer doesn't mean that they don't know what
right,
feels good for a user,
right.
rather than butting people. Yeah, but it is contradictory, and
Amen.
you exile yourself from the social group if you chop people's opinions in half.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I do in those situations when there's opposition, right? When a client is arguing with me or they're arguing with someone on their team in a meeting or something, I wait for an opportunity and then I say, look, tell me what do you want? What do you really want here? What do you want to happen? Or what do you want to avoid? and it'll go back and forth like that. We're only talking about you right now. Tell me what you want most out of this. And then they'll throw it out on the table. Now there's an opportunity for me and those folks I'm trying to help to say, we can absolutely help you get that. Because up to that point, this person is fighting and arguing and keeping UX over here because they
They
did
don't
not
understand.
connect the dots that these folks can help me get this thing
Hmm.
that I think I have to go elsewhere to get. And that changes the nature of the conversation. It changes the temperature in the room as well. Right. So get rid of this idea that you're going to educate people. No one's asking to be educated. Have conversations, ask questions.
There's also that principle in the 7 habits of highly effective people: understand before you are understood,
Yes,
understand the other parties before you make your claim.
absolutely.
uh Joseph Merciega, um
Nice.
designers should also get acquainted with research, especially quantitative, since there are a lot of qualitative. Point is about boosting employability.
Yeah, I could see that. I agree with that. We're not traditionally very well versed in quantitative research. And like it or not, there are lots of people in business that love numbers. Why? Because numbers make them feel safe.
Yeah, they're
Whether they're
analytical.
true or not is irrelevant. Numbers make people feel safe. So you have to at least be able to speak to those things and have conversations about them. I agree with that point entirely.
I mean, how do you make the case for, I want to make this initiative? We see these users, they have negative sentiment, but they're still paying. How do you quantify that to potential figures? Do you say you're not, they're not going to be, delighted with their user experience, so they're not going to recommend their friends? Therefore,
Well,
you're
sometimes
losing.
here's my thing. There's almost always a financial story that's being told. If there is dissatisfaction, if there's true evidence of dissatisfaction, it always shows up somewhere.
Hmm.
This is why I tell people all the time, if you don't know what your company's financials are and those things are made public, you need to find out. You need to be watching those trends and watching what happens. Okay. If it's a publicly traded company, watch what happens to the stock price. Now, is some of that manipulation of the market? Yes. At the same time, it's a reaction to something, right? So a lot of times when people are pissed off, they'll say, well, our margins are still good. People aren't really, leaving in droves or anything. But a lot of times there is some little tiny financial trend that's starting where a certain revenue in a certain department on a certain service is starting to go like this. And that service is part of a larger package. It's not sold a la carte, but one particular piece of it is going like this. So that's a warning sign. There's almost always evidence, and you can almost always find it if you ask enough questions. It's usually there somewhere.
I think that's also slightly that's a very political terrain, because sometimes that is attributed to people mismanaging their resources or
That's right.
pushing their ego and causing customer churn. But
And it could be cost too. I mean, have a tendency to think about, revenue in a for-profit organization, but a lot of
Right.
times it's also cost. If you see support cost increasing somewhere,
Mhm.
even though subscription hasn't changed, or contract levels haven't changed, if companies made its quarterly projections, but service costs are going like this, there's a problem somewhere. And it's 9 times out of 10, that is a user or customer experience problem.
Internal or external, because if internal employees are having to work double the
Correct.
time, then they have to expend double the labor costs.
That's
So,
right. Like I said,
um,
that story is always there somewhere.
Keith Horvath says, "Thank you for your insights."
You're welcome.
My Mikhail
Oh, that's a good one.
Wisniewski, he's asking, how would you get some semblance of research done if the client tells you that we don't have time or money to do research and no access to users? Specifically thinking of early stage startups, pre MVP. So,
Right. I love this question. I love it. Here's the thing, and you may know this. You may know this already, so I may be preaching to the choir. But the thing about startups that everybody forgets is that until they are stable, funded for an extended period of time, until they find market fit, essentially,
mhm,
this is a battle for survival. Okay, it's like The Walking Dead, and you're trying not to get eaten by zombies, while you're trying not to get killed by all these other things that are popping up every once in a while. There is nothing that matters more to a startup than surviving another day to get that next round of funding. Nothing. Absolutely nothing is more important than that. No matter how much you talk about research or its importance or good design or its importance or how it'll wow investors or shareholders or possible shareholders or whatever, doesn't matter. Get the money, stay alive until we figure out what the hell we're going to do. We don't have a market yet. We have no evidence that this is going to work. That's panic. Startups are in panic mode for an extended period of time. All right. So, number one, you got to realize that's the game. So, yeah, things like, we don't have time to do that. They're also afraid to talk to users or customers because they don't want to hear that this is a bad idea and we shouldn't do it. All right. Or
mhm,
we've missed the mark by 80 miles. That's a frightening thing. So
true.
you have to recognize the fear there. The last part of this is in a situation like that, you're not getting weeks of research. It's
Mm,
not happening. Okay. The best you can hope for is a much smaller ask. And that smaller ask might be 8 hours. How many users or customers can we talk to in 8 hours? Or how much anecdotal evidence can we go through in 8 hours? If they say you can't talk to anybody, then you have to have a different conversation. You say, well, ideal if you have some evidence that you're missing the mark, okay, that people aren't coming to it or initial adoption isn't what the company hoped it would be, you got to have a leg to stand on here to say, okay, we're about to commit, I don't know, $500,000 in development costs over the next 6 months. Wouldn't it make sense to spend the equivalent, our internal cost of 8 hours just trying to validate whether that expense is going to be worth doing in the first place, or figuring out what our odds are that we're going to get a return on that $500,000? It's a drop in the bucket. Okay. 8 hours out of that, that's a drop in the bucket. It's nothing. But you have to frame it in those terms. I've said to clients who have said to me, we don't want to do this discovery part of this. Same thing. I typically work with big organizations. So I'm saying, okay, you're telling me that you're going to spend $1.5 million over the
doing the
next
wrong thing.
6 months, and you're not willing to spend a couple $100,000 to figure out whether that's a worthwhile use of your money and your time? Really? And they go, well, we didn't think about it that way. Okay, it's a drop in a bucket. You're going to spend the money anyway. It doesn't matter. So my point is, you got to reframe your ask. All right. I told a story on LinkedIn once where a company said, look, we're not doing any research. We don't have any time for this. No time, no time, no time, no time. And I said, look, let's take half a day. How many 15-minute interviews can we jam into one morning? Because users were all internal. These were all internal employees. And they went for that. They're like, okay, fine, do it. And we did it. And we recorded everybody, and we got a bunch of people in a room and looked at the transcripts of every interview, and literally with a red marker circled the things that came up in every single conversation. This is what we got. Okay. We got 6 hours to make something happen. Okay. Commonality. I'm seeing this. Every single person's talking about the same thing. This is where we're going. Let's see what we can do to make this better. And that was it. So you have to adjust your ask, especially in a startup situation. You need to throw all the stuff you've heard about UX and research right out the window. Deal with reality. Deal with what is. Okay. Something is better than nothing. Ask smaller. And the chances are, once they see the value of that little tiny thing that didn't cost anybody any time or money, really, chances are you'll get more than you asked for.
I think that there's a fundamental disconnect with people that go into a startup and they think that their hypothesis is going to immediately land them work and clients. Maybe they do. Maybe they're lucky. Good for you. But the startup incentive, the startup objectives is maximize your learnings to reduce the mistakes that are going to be hemorrhaging money in your account.
That's right.
When you're in a business sense, when you hit something that is continuously giving you cash, giving you some revenue, repeatable revenue at a good unit cost, where you have profit margins, and you can pay your employee,
you're stable.
And you stabilize. That's a business. Then you have a proven business model, and then you think about scaling. But you could do competitive analysis. That costs you an afternoon. You could just go look at companies that are doing like things. You could do smoke test. You could pretend to sell the whole package as it is. Don't build anything, but just say to the potential customers, we got this thing. It's this price. What do you think? That doesn't cost
agree. I totally agree. And here's something else. I've said this recently, and people lose their minds. There doesn't always have to be research.
Do and learn.
There doesn't. There doesn't. If the only thing you can do is just do something and get it out there and learn from it quickly, then that's what you do. If all you've got is your gut and your intuition, and people are just stamping their feet and going, no, you're not talking to users. It's not fucking happening. All right, fine. Accept reality, do the best you can, and use every iteration, every launch as a test.
Yeah.
Okay. If the best you can do is make educated guesses, design, and learn, then that's what you do. To your point, research competitors, research similar products. I'm a big fan of empathy and situation mapping. If for no other reason than just to get everybody in the mindset of here's who we're designing for. Here's the stuff that they could be dealing with. Is it perfect? No. Is it provable? No. Does it help? Yes. Abandon the need to do everything like the right way. Life is not perfect. Ever.
I think we're gonna have to do some lightning rounds because we have 6 minutes on the clock, and we have a pile of questions coming in. So, what are your thoughts on stepping on others' toes? Just to get over the finish line. Like you have it in your gut that you have to do this thing, and you have to work around colleagues.
Well, here's what I think. I think you can always go forward. I am somewhat of a believer in ask for forgiveness, not permission. But you announce that shot across the bow when it happens. You say, look, in order for me to do this, I need this from you. If you can't give that to me by this date, or if you're not willing to, which is okay, it's your call. Here's what I'm going to do. That's not a question. It's not an ask. It's a statement of fact. If I don't get what I need from you, here's what I'm going to do, because I have to make a step forward, and I'm on the hook. Okay. I'm responsible, and I'm not going to set myself on fire because you don't want to work with me. So you say, here's what's going to happen in a polite way, in a diplomatic way. You're not threatening anybody.
Be careful. Be careful to expend your social political capital.
You don't do it in a way that's like, well, if you're not going to help me. No, you just say, look, I'm on the hook here for this. I have to do something. I would much rather do it with your help. Means the outcome's going to be better. But at the end of the day, here's probably what I'm going to have to do. if this isn't something you can help me with. And that's it. Sometimes that has to be done, period.
We have Sakshi Satardekar as a UX design student. How can I navigate the current layoff climate and strategically position myself within the diverse UX UI field?
Well, the answer to this question is the same no matter what the climate is. Quite frankly, you need two things, okay, to get a job in a crowded field, because there are more opportunities now than there ever were, open positions, believe it or not, even with all the layoffs. You need experience. Number one, you got to have real work on your resume, real work on your portfolio for real clients. You got to find a way to get that if you don't have it. If that means volunteering, it means volunteering. The second thing is that every single story you tell on that resume, in that portfolio, on LinkedIn, everywhere else, has to be skewed toward business results. Here are the outcomes I got for these businesses. Here's what I helped them have or be or do or make. You've got to be telling that story. Again, businesses aren't going to hire you because you're good with users. They're going to hire you because you can help them make or save more money. That is how this works. So you got to be singing their song in your resume and your portfolio.
I just want to add to that. There's only 3 things you can say to a business to make your business case. It's not more complicated than this. I'm going to reduce costs.
Yeah.
I'm going to increase revenue, or I'm going to service more customers.
Yes.
That's it. Don't overcomplicate it.
Agreed. Completely agree.
Joel Gill says, greetings.
Joel.
We have Paula Rimmer saying, hi, Joe. I am finding your thoughts really interesting.
That's very good.
We have Tanisha Day saying, how do you approach user research? What methods do you find to be most effective?
Oh, that's a loaded question. And I don't think it's something we have time for, but I will say this. People don't like this answer either, but too bad. Anytime you are asking people questions and trying to get answers, anytime you are digging into their behavior in any way, shape, or form, you're doing research. Okay. It's all research. If you are striving to find out what actually is going to move the needle for people, what they expect, what they're willing to use, what they have trouble with, I don't care how you do that. Just start doing it. Don't get wrapped up around what methods are best. A lot of people do that. Formal researchers do that. I don't care. Not everybody has the luxury that they have. Start somewhere. Start anywhere. Start trying to figure out what these people want and why they want it, more importantly. That's the lightning round answer.
Sir, do you think graphic designers have any advantage over non-design related people jumping into UX UI?
Yes, with a caveat. The caveat depends on how you were taught graphic design. The problem with that discipline is that there are lots of programs who simply teach the visual aspect of it without the principles and thinking behind why those visual choices are the right choices. When I learned graphic design, it was all about human beings. It was about perception, cognition, psychology. It was about visual communication, in other words, how something meets expectation, how something answers questions, how it guides, how it literally pushes people in some ways from this to this, to this, to this, to this. If that stuff is missing, like I have taught students who are at a junior and senior level in university, and I say, well, you guys are, I'm sure, are all familiar with Gestalt principles. And they go, what? Okay, if you've never had it, if you don't know that the fundamentals of alignment, rhythm, proximity,
contrast,
hierarchy, dominance, contrast, if you don't know all those principles, you're going to have a problem breaking into UX, because UX is about those parts.
Visual, human, psychological communication.
But yes, otherwise, it's people who have had a sound graphic design education. Absolutely. I did. It's what enabled me to make the leap. When UX as a term came out, I was one of those people who was like, and that's what I'm doing now. So, and it really was. Nothing has changed about the way I do anything for a very long time.
Joe, I just want to say that I've had a lovely time, and I hope that the audience derives some value from this. We only got to questions up until 12:30. So we may have to do another one, or you may have to follow up with them individually, however you'd like.
Yeah,
That's
if I can see the questions somewhere, I'd be happy to dive in and answer them.
in the LinkedIn, you should be able to see all the questions and comments
Okay.
in sequence.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'm happy to, as time permits, I'm happy to answer your questions in that in those comments as well. So thank
thank
you
you,
all.
everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you, sir.